Okay, so we talked about sectors. So now let me turn to zooming into connectivity.
Hmm.
So in your inaugural speech, you spoke about enhanced port capacity in Matarbari, Patenga, Labari, etc. So what is the plan for Chittagong Port, which is our main port, and Matarbari, and what is that vision for regional connectivity overall? Because movement of goods and people are so important, but specifically movement of goods for trade.
Yes. Thank you. That probably was one of the centerpieces of our argument about Bangladesh. Like, why invest in Bangladesh? Um, so, if you take a step back, if you think about the factors of production that we constantly say that we are one of the most cost competitive South and Southeast Asian countries in terms of factors of production. Um, be it land cost, be it cost of utility, of course, cost of labor. In all of those cases, if you compare us against most of our competitor countries, we are actually one of the cheapest. However, we still keep on getting relatively poor investment, and part of the reason I think, or the hypothesis currently we have, is one, the productivity levels of our workers are not necessarily there, and you can have a much longer discussion on that, but I'm just going to set that aside. The other piece is our logistics and supply chain network is just not well built. It takes many days more to bring something in Bangladesh, add value. So let's say if you bring cotton and then convert it into clothing and then send it out, the more time you need outside factory just moving the things around, the less cost competitive and competitive in general you become. So currently, for example, until I think last month, we never had this green channel idea, which we have now pulled out, and we have put it in motion. It was very common in Vietnam and England. It's very common in most part of the world, but we didn't have it. Um, but if you think about Chittagong Port, it is actually a riverine port. It's not even a seaport, and it is our biggest port. So I don't know if there's general awareness about it, but there are times of the day when Chittagong Port is actually not functional because the tide goes up and down in that river, and only there were parts of the time when the ships can actually go in and out. So it's not even a 24/7 functional port in that sense. That cannot be the biggest port and the most functional port we have in our country. We need to change. So what we have now as a master plan is, in addition to Chittagong Port, on Konofuli River, we'll have two more ports, which are much closer to the sea. And then we will have a bay terminal, which is on the sea. Um, and then in Matarbari, we'll have a deep sea port, which then helps us circumvent the entire from Chittagong to Singapore or Chittagong to Colombo and then to Europe. Instead of that, you can just go Chittagong to Europe. You can bring larger vessels, and that would cut our total turnaround time in a massive way. So everything that we are imagining now is heavily dependent on our ports, logistics, supply chain capacity. And that's why we are very laser focused to make that happen. I do want to mention, and I've gotten a lot of stick for that afterwards, is that I didn't talk about Mongla enough. So the second option, obviously, is Mongla Port. We are doing a regeneration project at this moment with Chinese government to improve the port facility in Mongla. We are also considering a second economic zone beside the export processing zone in Mongla for the Chinese investors. So it is not absolutely forgotten. It is there. It is the second alternative to Chittagong. But I think at the end of the day, if you think about capacity between Chittagong and Mongla, Chittagong will probably have 70-80% capacity, even in the long run for our country.
That's right. But it's good to hear that we're thinking of enhancing these connections and infrastructure.